How's it going, guys, and welcome back. Let's not waste any time in intros and jump right into things I wish I knew earlier in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. As always, we'll be starting off with some basic tips directed more towards the newer players who have just maybe started their adventure or still downloading the game, and then we'll slowly move on to some more advanced stuff that gets really into the nitty-gritty of the game, so hopefully there's something in here for everyone. When you first start your playthrough, you're definitely going to notice three main problems, if I'm honest with you. The first is you're going to be hungry and you have no food. The second is you're going to be tired and have nowhere to sleep. And the third is you're going to have no money to solve any of the first two issues. So let's get the first one out of the way. A really, really easy method to get as much food as you essentially really ever need is going to be honey. Honey is the answer. So this can be done in pretty much any of the towns, but as we start in Troskowitz, when you finish the prologue, we're going to show it to you just here. If you head to the south of where you pretty much first start, you're going to find these stone-looking cones, which are actually going to be beehives. So in these beehives, you can loot a bunch of honey from each of them. You get more than enough to sustain you for quite some time by just looting these once. And they do actually replenish with more honey after a short time in-game. I don't know if it's like 1 or 2 days. Every time I've come back because I need more food, they've always been completely replenished again. And like I said, you can find these around most of the main towns in the game. So definitely take advantage of this. Grab as much honey as you need. And this is really, really useful for making sure you never starve again in the game. So that's the first of our basic needs out of the way. The next one is going to be a place to sleep. You can literally sleep in pretty much any bed in the game. However, many of them won't save the game when you sleep unless it's one that you own or you have permission to be there. And at most of the inns, you can actually pay a higher fee and have a permanent bed there so you don't have to pay every single time. However, near the start of the game, you are definitely not about to spend 100 plus gold on just a place to sleep. So as much as I'm sure you are itching to explore and do all the side content and you're sort of just going to ignore the main quest for a while, I would definitely recommend advancing just 2 parts of the main quest once you gain the free roam here in Troskowitz. The first is to head up here to Tachov and do the blacksmith quest. Just the first part of his quest is fine, where he teaches you how to craft weapons. And once you finish that and you talk to him, he will actually give you access to one of the rooms here at the smithy. And this is going to be your bedroom permanently for the rest of the game now. So you can sleep here, and you even have a chest where you can permanently store your items. So being able to sleep here and save the game whenever we want completely for free is a great thing to do as soon as possible. If you wish to, at the other end of the map at the lower Semine Mill, we can do the other of the main quest here. And after we do the first part where we need to retrieve the document and bring it back to him, he will give us access to be able to use the upper room here to sleep in as well. It's sort of not as nice as the one at the blacksmith, to be honest. I use the blacksmith as my home base most of the time here in the first region. And while we can now save game at any of these beds by simply resting, there are going to be occasions where you're going to want to save game out in the fields or before doing something risky. And this game's solution to that are the save schnapps, which are a potion essentially that you need to consume to be able to make a manual save. Unfortunately, one of the ingredients to make this potion is called belladonna, and they're actually kind of hard to find. And while you can find an odd 1 or 2 belladonna around Troskowitz, there's actually a really, really good way of farming a bunch of them. If you come to these fields down here, just to the southeast of Troskowitz, as soon as you get to the entrance of these fields, on the left-hand side on the border, you're going to find a bunch of these belladonna that you can pick up. And then once you finish picking all of those up, in the same fields, if you travel just a tiny bit further down the road on the right-hand side, you're going to find another batch of these belladonna plants. After picking up all of these, you should get at least 26 belladonna plants, which should be more than enough so that you can go to any alchemy table and craft yourself some save schnapps. And these plants do actually regrow after 1 or 2 in-game weeks. If you do happen to run out of save schnapps and you find yourself in a situation where you're about to try something a little bit risky, maybe you're about to attempt a risky lockpick, or you're about to steal someone's life savings just because that's the sort of person you are, you actually have another option, which is you can simply press the start button and go down here to save and quit. This will create a manual save file, but you can't have more than one of them, so it will just keep on overwriting itself, but it's perfect for situations like this where you're going to try something. So if whatever atrocious act you were trying to commit didn't work out, you can simply reload the save and try again, or maybe don't. A great thing to do at the start of the game is definitely get the completely free bow and arrow that can be found right here on this exact location we're showing you on the map. All you need to do is walk off the path here slightly towards the east and you'll see a target. To the right of that target, you're going to find a bow just leaning up against the tree, which you can take for free, no repercussions, it's not stealing, it's completely yours. Make sure you also loot the bag next to it, as it's going to contain some arrows as well as a book to increase your archery skills, and also take the arrows out of the target as they are also free to take. There's also a very, very good shield we can get early game, completely free. However, for this one, we will need to get a shovel. To get the shovel, we could simply buy one from the Truskowitz merchant. However, we're all about saving that gold in this playthrough, so we're going to head over here to the east of Truskowitz, and in the graveyard, there's going to be a shovel just leaning up against the wall here. We can take it. It is technically stealing it. However, on low value items such as these, if you go back and rest for just a couple of hours, even if you don't put it in the box, it will remove the stolen status from it, which is, I guess, another tip I was going to talk about afterwards, but we may as well mention it right now. If you do find yourself with some stolen items on you for whatever reason, you can just put them in the box next to your bed, or you can risk sleeping with them, and as time passes on, they will slowly become not counted as stolen. The more expensive, the more valuable the item, the longer you need to wait before that item counts as not stolen. Anyway, now that we have the shovel, we're going to head down to this marker right here just south of Truskowitz. If we diverge off the pathway here just a little bit, we're going to find two graves. The one on the right hand side, the first one we're digging up here, contains a corpse, which does also have a shield, but it's a worse version with the same name of the shield we're actually looking for. But then the grave just to the left of it here, if we dig this up also with the shovel, we're going to find the shield we are looking for, as it's quite expensive. You could sell it, but I wouldn't recommend it, as it's definitely the best shield you can get this early on in the game. I would also highly recommend taking off all of your clothes every time you're going to dig up a grave, as it does make your clothes get really dirty, and this will affect how people and merchants react to you in the towns. So in this game, you can have more than one outfit preset, so I always have one with pretty much no clothes on in case I'm trying to sneak around or simply dig up graves so I don't really mind about getting dirty, and then just switch back to my main outfit once I'm done. So once you do have a little bit of gold in your pockets, two things I would recommend buying as soon as you possibly can are going to be the belt and the pouch. Both of these items can be bought from the Truskowitz general store, and they are quite relatively cheap. And what they do is the pouch will allow you to have a hotkey item, so you can equip like a potion or food, so you can quickly use it without going into the menu each time. And the belt, most importantly, will allow you to have a secondary weapon. This means you can have a weapon set up where you can have a bow and then switch it out to the sword when the enemies get near without having to go into your item inventory every time. So definitely pick up both the belt and the pouch as soon as you can. The next thing, I'm sure you've seen this all over the place, is make sure you get Pebbles the horse. This is very easy. All you need to do is go down to Semin, where you can see here on the map. And at the entrance, you want to go on to the left path here, and this will take you down to the stables. Here, simply interact with Pebbles, which is the horse we can see right here. After we've done that, talk to the keeper and mention Pebbles. Once we've convinced him that Pebbles used to be your horse, he will give us a chance to buy Pebbles off of him. However, if you don't want to spend 150 gold, which is understandable, you can actually persuade him to give it to you for free. It's a very easy persuasion, but it is obviously going to depend on your speech level slightly. Honestly, I did this extremely close to the beginning of the game. I had haggled a few of the shops and spoken to some town people, but I still had a pretty low speech level when I did this, and I convinced him first try to get it for free with no problems. So unlike the horses that you may have stolen in the past, Pebbles is actually yours permanently, which means you don't have to worry about him running away every time you get off, and you can actually call him to your location no matter where you are on the map. And while poor Pebbles doesn't have great stats at the start of the game, however, Pebbles does have a hidden secret feature, which is when you ride over 30 kilometers on Pebbles' back, he actually gets a pretty decent stat boost. Speaking of stat boost, a great way to level up your strength and vitality at the same time, and these are going to affect your main level as well, is simply over-encumber yourself. So by just walking around carrying more weight than your character is supposed to be carrying, you can't actually sprint, but just by walking, you will increase both your strength and vitality, which is a great way to level up early game. And each level you increase in your strength will allow you to actually carry more weight. So when it comes to your illegal activities sneaking around at night, there are a few things that you want to take into account. The first thing is make sure you keep an eye out for the blue icon here, which simply means you're trespassing. If you see this blue icon right here, it means you're not allowed to be there, and someone sees you, they will either ask you to leave or straight up try to attack you, depending on the severity of the situation. Something that I'm not entirely sure is genius or just really annoying, just make sure that when sneaking around, you close the doors again behind you. Even after successfully stealing from somebody's house, even if nobody's seen you, if you leave that door open and somebody walks past, they're actually going to be suspicious and say, okay, I didn't leave that door open, and they're going to start sniffing around. And that can actually lead to the guards interrogating you and even filing the stolen goods on you, and then it just goes downhill from there. So make sure you close the doors behind you. This one's a little bit more obvious, but obviously don't try and sneak around in heavy, clunky, noisy armor. By wearing lighter clothes or simply no clothes at all pretty much, you are going to be a lot quicker and less noisy in the dark. As for what to do with the stolen goods, as we mentioned before, you can just leave them in your box and then just let time go on, and eventually they will lose that little red hand marking, meaning that they're marked as stolen, and they'll just count as normal items that you can sell wherever you like. However, if you do wish to sell them as stolen, you can sell stolen items at a specific fence. One of such places is the fence here at the Nomad camp. He doesn't mind if things are stolen, he'll buy them off you anyway. Unfortunately, he doesn't actually have much gold. It will replenish with time, but you can't get a bunch of money from him, but it is a nice way way to get rid of anything that you don't want to wait until it loses that status. Quick side note, also worth mentioning that when you are selling stuff, make sure you sell it to the shop that relates to that item. So if you're selling a weapon, make sure you're selling it to the blacksmith. If you're selling a piece of clothing, sell it at the tailor's, as they will give you more gold for the item as opposed to just selling everything at the general item store. As for selling weapons, make sure before you do that they're at 100% health. You can do this by going into any of the sharpening wheels and repairing them yourself for free, as they will fetch more gold if they are fully repaired. When it comes to reading books in the game, whether they be skill books or simply regular storybooks to increase your scholarship stats, they do actually take up in-game time to read, which isn't that important, but if you are sitting down on a bench, for example, when you decide to read, it'll actually decrease quite massively the amount of time it requires you to read that book. Another thing, once you are done with books, make sure you're selling them off, as some of them fetch a pretty decent amount of gold, and you have really no use for them once you've already finished them. I'm sure while exploring, you found a bunch of these nests up in the trees as you keep getting the notifications in the top part of the screen. When you do come across these, make sure you're throwing stones at them, or you can also use the bow and arrow if you really want to waste arrows on this, but just crouch down and throw stones at these nests, and when they drop down, they can actually drop some pretty useful items sometimes. Anyway, this video has gone on for way too long, so I think we're going to cut it here. I'm looking at the outline of, we don't really make scripts, we have like outlines of the points we're going to talk about, and there's still a bunch of them left, so I'm going to go over those afterwards and check to make sure there's nothing too important on there. If there is, we'll make a part 2, don't worry. But anyway, this is always a community effort, so if any of you guys have any extra tips that I didn't mention in this video, be sure to leave them in the comments down below to help out your fellow players. I hope you did find this video helpful. If you did, don't forget that thumbs up button, subscribe for more content coming very soon, and we'll see you next time.